First and foremost, I want to give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh Ba'ashim Yahushai Ba'ashem Rakakwadash. Yahweh is to this world ignorantly calls God. Yahweh Shai is to this world ignorantly calls Jesus. Ba'ashim means in the name, Rakah means spirit, and Kodash means holy. And that's all in the Paleo Hebrew. I also give double honors to the elder bishops and apostles of Great Millstone that taught me this truth. In today's video, I wanted to go into how these elites use high-level spiritual witchcraft. Okay, high-level witchcraft. And I'm making this video because this is something that I experienced myself. And I remember this brother specifically making this video 3 months ago, talking about how during the time of October, November, December, there was a specific man that told him that it was going to be a high-level attacks, that we were going to feel down. And when I tell you that during that time, it was like one of the most heaviest trials, heaviest down periods I've ever been in my life. I can't even explain, what ultimately I went through. But ultimately, the Lord pulled me out. But, after I went through all that, it's currently February, I look back and I'm like, hey, I remember that brother's video. I remember him, talking to that guy, literally saying exactly what I went through. And, another brother, here in the camp, he went through the same thing. So these are not coincidences. And these are, this is like a lesson giving that my personal testimony that these elites, the left-hand side is really turning up, but hey, if the left-hand side is turning up, then the right-hand side, it has to turn up also. It's that balance. But high-level attacks, man. I'm going to just let the brother speak.
And this lesson is going to be entitled, What a Stranger Told Me About the Time of Scorpio. Okay, and when I say stranger, I really mean angel. Okay, the same individual that you see in this image that I've done maybe a few lessons on, that I told you that he's an angel of the Lord. That's, basically a double agent on the earth. Okay, and this is an individual that I see often, very often. All right, but he's a very peculiar individual because he's not from this world. Okay, and some brothers may not be able to see it, maybe because they're not in a spiritual mindset, and they might say, oh, he's too light skinned. The angels would only come looking like John Shaft. The Most High will send the angel down looking however he wants him to look. Okay, these are spiritual beings, and you have to be spiritual to even perceive that you're talking to an angel. And there's just so many signs and so many things that prove to me that this man is an angel, that he's not just a regular individual. First of all, this video I did, he's wearing a crown of feathers. And that he made himself, by the way. He made that by himself. I didn't ask him how he made it, but he didn't buy that from the store. This was actual pigeon feathers. Was he hunting pigeons? No, I don't think so. Okay. And what he was wearing when I saw him, was it yesterday? Yeah, yesterday. He was wearing glasses, and I thought they were regular glasses till I got closer. And really what they were was these, how the brothers make the stones using the copper cords. It was glasses that he made himself. You could tell because it was uneven, right? That was the copper cords with the stone in the middle of his forehead and the stone and the stone on both sides of his head. Okay, and he told me the name of the stone. And he told me the benefits of the stone. Listen, man, there's a lot of reasons why I know this is not a regular individual, but that's not the point. Let me go into the point of one of the things that were said. Okay, one of the things that was said, because we did have an extensive conversation. One of the things that was said was, I'm not going to tell you everything, but I'll tell you this part. This part I want to do a lesson on was that, he said that, we're coming into the time of the scorpion, right? So, he said that you're going to feel dead around that time. And, that's when I say, brothers have that blah spirit, that I guess you could say languishing spirit, right? So he said you're going to feel like that during the time of Scorpio that we're coming into, which he said was November 23rd. But we'll get back to normal. I'll feel back to normal in and he said it like he's included in it. We'll feel back to normal after the time of Christmas. Okay, and I looked up the time of Scorpio because you have to understand that these elites and these top level witches do witchcraft, do high level witchcraft on certain days, because the time of Scorpio is truly the time of was it Samhain, right? You think that October 31st represents Samhain? No, but remember, they did things according to the moon in the ancient world. They didn't do things according to some Gregorian calendar. Remember, this goes back to the ancient world. This was dictated by the moon. So October 31st was not the true Samhain. Okay, and the witches understand that the true Samhain is really in the time of the Scorpio that's coming up. Okay,
right. So, hey, as you heard the brother, he believes that man to be an angel. And the reason why is because when you go to the scriptures, it talks about how, I believe it's Hebrews, the 13th chapter. Let's go to Hebrews 13 and verse 1. It says, "Let brotherly love continue. Be not forgetful to entertain strangers, for thereby some have entertained angels unawares." Right? So, hey, there are certain people out here that are angels, okay, disguised. And like he said, you got to have a real spiritual mindset, to even believe that. And, based on his account, he believes this man is an angel, which, I can further testify as, to that, because first his appearance, but second, the message about how, hey, during these specific times, we're all going to feel down. We're all going to feel languishing like that, blah, real, just like, nope, real down, man, real heavy. And when I tell you, it was like I never felt that feeling in my life. And it was exactly those dates where this man said. So, what ultimately is this? Ephesians chapter 6. This is the basics, man. Ephesians chapter 6 and verse 12, it says, "For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places." Right, so this is a spiritual battle. Okay, the elites, okay, they're working overtime, communicating with these devils, okay, pushing mass spells upon the masses, right, to make the masses act a certain type of way. And, you think that's not going to affect, the elect also? Of course it's going to affect the elect. It's just that the elect, are going to be able to bounce back. Okay, the elect are not going to be cast under that spell, because as it says, there's no enchantment against Jacob. Okay, the Lord, it has a spiritual protection around, his believers. But, hey, these things are real. And, the only way you can combat it is, verse 11, "Put on the whole armor of God, that ye may be able to stand against the wiles of the devil." Right, so you got to put on that armor. Okay, you got to put on that sword, which is the word. Right, you jump down to verse 17, it says, "And take the helmet of salvation and the sword of the Spirit, which is the word of God." Right, so your helmet, your sword, your armor is the word. That's how you're able to combat, these attacks. Okay, you pray, you fast, you hear the word. Okay, every single day you're focused on Yahweh Shem Yahushai. That's the only way. And one thing about these, these demons, these evil spirits, is that their whole purpose is to get you off doing that. Right? It's to distract you from the word. Okay, and they have multiple ways to do that. The cares of the world, okay, your woman, your job, money, just, anything materialistic, that's their way of getting you off the word. And it ties in directly, with the parable of the sower that talks about how, the seed that fell among thorns, and how the cares of this world, right, the lusts of the flesh ultimately choked the word and made it unfruitful. Right? So, hey, those are those demons playing. Okay, those attacks. Which, when you go into Isaiah chapter 47, it talks about how this place, Babylon the Great, was founded upon witchcraft. Okay? Isaiah chapter 47 and verse 8, it says, "Therefore hear now this, thou that art given to pleasures, that dwellest carelessly, that sayest in thine heart, I am, and none else beside me. I shall not sit as a widow, neither shall I know the loss of children." Right, so the mentality of these Americans is that they're never going to go down. Right, that America is going to be the power, the force forever. It says, "But these two things shall come to thee in a moment, in one day, the loss of children and widowhood, they shall come upon thee in their perfection, for the multitude of thy sorceries, and for the great abundance of thine enchantments." Right, so in one day, Babylon, America, is going to be destroyed, okay, by that nuclear fire. And one of the reasons why is because of the sorceries and the great abundance of enchantments that they have done. Right, so wickedness, which, if you go into that word, okay, let's go to that in Isaiah chapter 47. Jeremiah. Let's go into those words in the Hebrew. Let's see, I'm at 6%. We'll still got some time. Isaiah 47 and verse 9. So you go into that word, sorceries. It says sorcery, witchcraft, right? Which witchcraft is incantations, right? Communicating, with those evil spirits, which some people do have, that ability. Okay, that's why you read in the scriptures, it talks about how that's forbidden. Okay, speaking with familiar spirits, right? Leviticus chapter 19 and verse 31, it says, "Regard not them that have familiar spirits, neither seek after wizards to be defiled by them. I am Yahweh your power." Right? So you're not even supposed to be dealing with that. Right? Leviticus 20:6, "And the soul that turneth after such as have familiar spirits, and after wizards to go whoring after them, I will even set my face against that soul, and will cut him off from among his people." Right? 27, "A man also or a woman that hath a familiar spirit, or that is a wizard, shall surely be put to death. They shall stone them with stones, their blood shall be upon them." Right? So it doesn't just say this because, just because. No, that left-hand side is real. Right? If the right-hand side is real, the left-hand side is real too. And there are certain people on the earth that they're able to hear those voices to communicate, okay, with those spirits. Which, the thing about it, I've heard stories since, I'm Cuban, and in Cuba, they have a lot of Santeria, which is a specific form of witchcraft, goes back to Africa. And, I've heard, countless stories about how, yeah, I know that spirit, I know that spirit. My own mom has said that, yeah, the fan was just, started moving by itself, as somebody was, tapping it. And, oh, yeah, that's my dad, I know him. So here it is, my mother thinks that's her dad, but, hey, you don't know what that spirit is. That's the whole point of the left hand, is to deceive you. Here it is, you think it's your dad, but it's a whole straight demon. So, hey, this is why Yahweh Bashimi Hawashai, it has to be on the forefront, because if you don't got that defense, man, hey, you're out here defenseless. You like a lamb, surrounded by wolves. But going back to Isaiah 47, let's read the other word. Where were we at? Verse 9. Let's go into that word, enchantments. Right, association, company, band, shared, association, society, a magician, charmer, spell, an incantation, a charm. Right, so somebody that deals in those arts, and that's what America was built upon, and they still do till this day. So reading down to verse 12, it says, "Stand now with thine enchantments, and with the multitude of thy sorceries, wherein thou hast labored from thy youth. If so be thou shalt be able to profit, if so be thou mayest prevail." Right, so it's pretty much saying, hey, let's see if all that witchcraft saves you. It says, "Behold, they shall be as stubble, the fire shall burn them, they shall not deliver themselves from the power of the flame, there shall not be a coal to warm at, nor fire to sit before it." Right, so at the end of the day, you see, this, that at the end of the day, that witchcraft isn't going to save you, people. And no matter what those demons tell you, you're being deceived, because the left-hand side, it works for the Heavenly Father, Yahweh. Okay, and, the right-hand side always prevails. A perfect example of this is when you go into, Moses, okay, turning his staff into a serpent. Right, you go back to Exodus chapter 7. Exodus chapter 7 and verse 10, it says, "And Moses and Aaron went into Pharaoh, and they did so as Yahweh had commanded. And Aaron cast down his rod before Pharaoh and before his servants, and it became a serpent." Right, so his rod became a serpent. That was a sign that the Lord, a power that the Lord gave Moses in order to show the people that, the Most High is with him. It says, "Then Pharaoh also called the wise men and the sorcerers, now the magicians of Egypt, they also did in like manner with their enchantments. For they cast down every man his rod, and they became serpents. But Aaron's rod swallowed up their rods." And that's the point. It's how these, Pharaoh's wise men, his magicians, they're able to do the same thing, right? Turn the rod into a serpent, yet at the end of the day, Aaron's rod swallowed up their serpents, showing you that the right hand prevails. Okay, so, hey, going back to the video, it's real, man. It's real. High-level spiritual attacks, and I experienced it, so stay on point, stay spiritual, always do what you got to do, because Satan doesn't sleep. These evil spirits don't sleep 24/7. They're out here trying to get you to fall off. So hopefully this is edifying. With that, I want to give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Ba'Shem Yahushua, Ba'Shem Rakakwadash, and double honors to the elder bishops and apostles of Great Millstone that taught me this truth. Shalom to you, like Shalom.